speaking to you from the traditional territory of Treaty 6, and I also acknowledge the Métis people who share a deep connection to this land. Over the weekend, Danielle Smith commissioned an IT review into her own interference in the prosecution of criminal charges. And wouldn't you know it, they didn't find anything. This would be laughable if the matter wasn't so very serious. These criminal cases include charges of conspiracy to murder police officers. Danielle Smith's internal review is a cover-up. I want to make something very clear. This is not just about emails from the Premier's staff to prosecutors questioning their judgment. These emails are part of this scandal, of course, but my colleague Irfan Sabir formally requested an independent investigation into the Premier's actions days before media reports of these emails came out. In the Premier's own public statements, on camera and in writing, on 3 separate occasions, she boasts about deliberately interfering in the criminal justice system. The only adequate response to this UCP chaos is a fully independent investigation, just as retired Justice Adele Kent conducted into the actions of UCP MLA Casey Madhu. That investigation took 33 days and led to Casey Madhu being sacked as Attorney General for attempting to interfere in the administration of justice. Smith's refusal to commission a fully independent investigation strongly suggests that she has something to hide. So today, I'm repeating 2 very simple calls. Danielle Smith must appear in public today and answer questions about her interference in criminal prosecutions. She cannot hide from Albertans forever. Secondly, I'm calling once again on Attorney General Tyler Shandro to commission a fully independent investigation today. He does not need the Premier's permission to do this. But if Danielle Smith and Tyler Shandro try to sweep this under the rug, as they appear to be doing, they will cause incredible damage to Alberta's reputation in this country and around the world. In Canada, no one is above the law, whether or not they have a friend in the Premier's office. All Canadians are protected by the rule of law and by due process. When those rights are replaced by the chaotic whims of a dishonest politician like Danielle Smith, we are heading into a very dangerous place very quickly. Around the world, people looking for somewhere to invest, to build a career, or raise a family will be looking at the behavior of Danielle Smith and the UCP, and they will go somewhere else. The only remedy for this UCP chaos is a fully independent investigation. Thank you, and I'll take your calls or questions.
Thank you, and I'll just check for questions in the room. And we'll go to questions on the phone. Just a reminder to press *9 if you're joining us on the phone. Use the raise hand function if you're joining us via Zoom. If you can say your name and your outlet at the top. Go to our first caller.
From CP, hope you can hear me.
Yeah, I can.
What do you think about the fact that the Premier announces an investigation and pointedly does not make talking to anybody involved part of that investigation?
Yeah, this really isn't an investigation. Let's be clear. What the Premier has done is an IT review. She essentially asked the IT folks within the government to do basically a Control-F search between the names of staff in her office and staff of some relevant prosecutors, and that's what we have here. This is by no means an investigation. An investigation would look into a number of issues. It would look into not only whether or not there is a presence of an email, but it would consider things such as, could they have been sent by personal emails and by personal email address that wasn't captured by this search. What was the content of those emails? It would have talked to relevant people. And let's go back to understanding that this isn't just about these emails. We have the Premier on record stating a number of times, almost boasting about it, bragging about the fact that she has talked to prosecutors and asked them questions about the charges related to COVID-19 restrictions. And now we're hearing about these emails that were sent from a member of her office to prosecutors related to the Coutts blockade charges. So this is really just a culmination of a number of issues that warrant a full investigation, not just an IT review, but asking questions, looking at relevant documents, and going back till the time that Danielle Smith became Premier. There are some very important questions that have not even become close to being answered by what we've seen today.
Any follow-up, Dean?
No, I think that answers it. Thank you.
Thanks.
And we'll go to our next caller.
Hi, thanks. Can you hear me okay?
I can, Catherine, yeah.
Thanks. So to follow up on an answer you gave, you mentioned that there's the possibility that these emails are contained in personal email addresses. Is that something that the information commissioner could investigate? If there is a whistleblower, is it something that the public interest commissioner could investigate? Are there other avenues other than Tyler Shandro?
Well, I think we could certainly, members of the public and, we could all explore these other options. But really, the point is that the Premier should just be putting an end to some of this incredible speculation and initiate, or at least Tyler Shandro should be initiating an independent investigation right away. There may be other avenues, but there's always going to be limits on that. Really, an independent investigation would have the ability to look into a lot of the issues that we're talking about here. Where were the emails sent from? What email addresses? What were the contents? And then looking back more broadly on the Premier's statements that she herself has questioned prosecutors about COVID-19 restriction charges. So there's certainly some avenues, but we've been saying, and what we've been saying for quite some time now, is the clearest way to try to limit some of the chaos that this government has created is for Tyler Shandro as Attorney General to appoint an independent investigation and do that work quickly. There is precedent within the UCP themselves under the Casey Madhu investigation done by former Justice Adele Kent, and that's a precedent. It can be done quickly, and it can begin to address the myriad of questions that Albertans rightfully have about whether or not this Premier and her staff can be trusted, and whether they're competent, and whether or not they understand the importance about the independence of the rule of law. These are the avenues that really, the Premier should want to put an end to this as quickly as possible as well, if there's nothing to hide. She should be calling this investigation to clear the air as quickly as possible. The fact that she refuses to do so lends more suspicion, suggests that there is something that they're hiding, and that they don't want to be clear and transparent to Albertans about what they've done. So I think the quickest way would be for Attorney General Tyler Shandro to do what we've been calling on him to do for weeks now, which is to appoint an independent investigator and to look into the heart of these issues.
Any follow-up, Catherine?
Yeah, and what's the professional obligation for any member of the Alberta Crown Prosecution Service who may have received this alleged email?
Yeah, well, they're going to have to evaluate, I think, their obligations as well, and I'm certain, I trust the prosecutors will be doing the right thing and evaluating their own professional obligations as well as their obligations as a member of the public service. But my concern, and I think broadly Albertans' concerns, is about the conduct of their Premier and the government and the Premier's office staff. That is what Albertans they need to be able to trust their Premier. That should almost go without saying. But we've had example after example in the last, few months, ever since Danielle Smith became Premier, of why her judgment and her ability to make sound decisions has been questioned. There's very good reason for that, and now we're actually hearing that, the Premier's office and the Premier herself has said that she has called prosecutors. This, it goes to the heart of the understanding of the rule of law. I've been asked a lot of questions in my role as a lawyer, but I have to say this is not about being a lawyer to understand what's being alleged here. What we're talking about is politicians leaning on law enforcement or prosecutors to decide who should be charged and who shouldn't be charged, and that should never happen. Politicians should not be interfering at all in the administration of justice and how the rule of law is applied. It's fundamental, and I think we need to be going back and asking why we don't trust that the current Premier can understand those issues and understands her responsibilities.
I'll go to our next caller.
Hey there, it's Audrey Never, but all my questions have been asked by my colleagues, so I'm good. Thank you.
Merci, Audrey.
We'll go to our next caller.
Hi, it's Janet French from the CBC. I understand that you're talking about wanting to see a broader investigation, but if you just look at what we know about the parameters of this existing IT search, what questions do you have about the way the search was done?
Well, we have very little information, Janet, about how the search was done. The Premier's comments on Saturday indicated that she would be looking at the 34 members of the Premier's office staff, as well as the 400 prosecutors in the prosecution's office. And that's what she said she'd be searching. Now, we don't know what that meant. Was it just a cross-reference between, names to see if any individuals emailed any other individuals? But I do have to point out that I, saw the news release that was issued this morning from the Premier's office. And it's a very short news release. And what it says is that they searched for any email sent to or received by the, quote, relevant prosecutors and staff in the Premier's office. So I have a question about what that means by relevant prosecutors. Does that mean that they only searched those emails that would have been sent to the prosecutors who are currently assigned to the Coutts charges? I don't know what relevant means, or was it actually, in fact, a search of all prosecutors? Because certainly the news release suggests it was only relevant prosecutors. So this is a counter to what the Premier said on Saturday. So again, this is just a pattern of very careful wording, very specific wording, changing wording. We had the Premier saying that she did clearly contact prosecutors. Then she's saying, no, I just contacted the Attorney General and the Deputy Attorney General, which is still, for the record, political interference. Now we're seeing that the news release says that there was no emails found between Premier's office staff and any relevant prosecutors. I don't know what the Premier's office means by relevant. I don't know who she searched. And again, that doesn't speak at all to the content of any email, nor whether or not it included personal email addresses as well.
Any follow-up, Janet?
Yes. How do you, I guess I'm just wondering about the standard of your expectations. How do you prove a negative? So say no emails ever actually were transmitted. How do you prove that that didn't happen?
Well, if there was a full investigation, you could have conversations. You could actually be interviewing and speaking to members of either the prosecutor's office, Premier's office. I would imagine you should talk to all of them. But there may be things that are captured in conversations. It's why, whenever an investigation is done, they don't simply rely on a Control-F search to see if there's any relevant documents to determine whether or not there's any issue that needs to be investigated further. Interviews, document reviews, understanding the scope of the search that was done. This is all much broader than just the IT review that this government has done. And you need to have somebody who's doing it who is impartial, who is trusted, so Albertans can believe and have confidence in the outcome of those results. That's what we saw when Justice Adele Kent did the review of Casey Madhu's traffic ticket situation. Albertans trusted the person who conducted the investigation. Right now, the Premier has developed a pattern of not being able to be trusted, of changing her words, of clarifying, of being more precise, but frankly contradicting herself. And it's not just related to these issues. In the few months she's been Premier, she's had to step back, clarify, apologize a number of times. So in order to eliminate some of this lack of clarity and the chaos that has been created by this situation, we think there needs to be an independent, impartial investigation that will look more broadly than just a search of the emails.
We'll go to our next caller.
Hi, it's Carrie Tate from the Globe and Mail. I'm curious whether or not you think the Justice Department has any fault here, where it started this with a briefing about the Coutts cases specifically. Is that appropriate?
Sorry, Carrie, you got cut off a little bit at the end there.
Oh, sorry. I'm just curious about whether Justice has any fault here, where all of this started with Justice giving a briefing to the Premiers or the Premier's staff. Is that appropriate?
Well, I don't think that actually, again, we don't really know exactly what has been done. We don't know what has been communicated because, again, we're relying solely on what the Premier's office is saying. And again, we're going back to the broader idea of what exactly took place and why we need an independent investigation. I can't say for certain whether or not it would be inappropriate. I think, honestly, there is, when a government is in charge, the minister or the Premier, I would say the minister and the Deputy Attorney General would want to know what cases are and what the workload is, of course, of their prosecution. But this is not what we're talking about here. What we're talking about here is allegations that the Premier has not just wanting to know what's being worked on, but she, by her own admission, has indicated a number of times that she has reiterated to the prosecution what standards should apply, clearly suggesting that perhaps there is not a public interest in pursuing COVID-19 restriction charges. And then we have now reporting on emails where it was being questioned, the charges, the very serious charges laid and related to the Coutts blockade. So this is not just reporting up in terms of the status of issues. This is actually the Premier herself and allegedly staff from her office who are questioning and applying some pressure or judgment onto prosecutors as they proceed to do their work. So this is a very different issue than just briefing up. This is actually the interference by the Premier and her staff into the independence of the prosecution.
And do you think that the prosecutors will have to be replaced in order for people to feel confident in the justice system?
I think this is why we continue to call for the independent investigation, because we don't know what has taken place, but we want to make sure that Albertans have the confidence in the outcomes and in the administration of justice. I also don't believe that myself as a politician that I should be commenting on whether or not the prosecutor should be replaced. That is not appropriate. What we need is an independent investigation so that Albertans can have trust and faith that the law is being applied fairly, that there is no political interference that's happening from the Premier's office and the Premier herself. That is the whole purpose behind an investigation, to create that confidence and make sure that Albertans know that things are being applied fairly as they should be.
We'll go to our next caller.
It's Tyson, CTV. Just wanted to reach out. The initial story had mentioned that the email or emails allegedly in question here were not seen, and that the province, of course, came out today saying they have no evidence of those emails. But if those emails were to come to light and they reopen an investigation, is that something you'd support by the province, or as you mentioned, you'd rather see something more independent?
Well, I think the premise of that question is sort of the idea that we're going to wait to see if those emails come forward. In the meantime, we continue to have this chaos and uncertainty. So certainly I think that, obviously if the emails do become made public, that there would be an independent investigation, but that should happen regardless right now, because we're saying that with the uncertainty, with very reliable public reporting of these emails that was done, we think that's enough to say, well, frankly, we needed to have an independent investigation when the Premier herself said that she had interfered in prosecutions. But this is more evidence as to why we need to do it now. My concern is that this uncertainty is continuing. If the Premier thinks that she can simply issue a news release saying we did an IT review and this matter will go away, I think she's sorely mistaken. Albertans are very concerned that they do not trust the current Premier. They do not trust that she can manage the situation and that she's actually understands the difference between the role of politicians and the role of the judicial system. This is a problem that's ongoing and is going to continue to go on until the Premier treats this situation with the gravity and seriousness that it warrants, which is to appoint an independent investigation right now and not wait for this story to keep trickling out and for more and more things to come forward and to prolong the chaos and uncertainty.
Any follow-up, Tyson?
None here, thank you.
And that's all for today. Thank you.
For watching, and to learn more, check out albertasfuture.ca.